devices you might have that might go off in inopportune times. And let's start the meeting this evening with a moment of silence. If you please join me. And if you would also please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, this evening we have a special guest. A guest who used to sit up here on the council dais with us and has gone off to Tallahassee to serve so well in the state capitol. Representative Joy Goff-Marcil is going to give us a legislative update of all that she's been up to for the last year or so. For the session, at least.
Thank you, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, members of the public. I guess we have no microphone, right? So I'll try to speak. The microphone's still not working?
No.
Okay. All right. Unfortunately, I don't have really good news for you this evening. I will give you a little update of the bills that we heard in the 2022 legislative session. We saw the continuation of trying to take away funding from our public schools and more local preemption bills. We saw an unconstitutional redistricting process that caused much concern on minority voting rights and which ended up diminishing the number of minority access districts in Florida by 50%. Far more attention was given to issues that do not increase the quality of life for Floridians. The legislature had two constitutional requirements when it convened: one, to pass a budget, and two, to pass the congressional and state maps. And unfortunately, the legislature did not get either one of those on time. We did get the budget passed. It hasn't been signed by the governor yet, so I'm not going to spend too much time talking about the budget since we don't know what's going to happen with that. But a third of it was federal funding. I was on the redistricting committee, so I witnessed firsthand the lack of transparency. And then once the maps were passed, the governor vetoed the maps, as you probably all know, and we reconvened for a special session in which the maps was drawn by the governor's office, and then the governor's final map ended up, as I said before, diminishing minority access districts by 50%. When we were on the redistricting committee, a lot of times the maps that would be put in front of us, it would be within a day. So we did not have time to take it back to the district to get public input, which was very concerning. And the other issue that I talked about was the education. Some of the legislation that came through the education bills were the school boards now have term limits imposed on them, and there's a system where anyone can petition for any book to be removed from public libraries were instituted. And I've already seen how this is affecting people. If you have kids that are in AP programs, some of those books would not be considered appropriate. So you might have to take your kid out of AP if you don't approve of these books. There was a bill that looked promising to decrease testing. If you have children, you know how stressful that is on your children, and I have 3 that have had to go through all that testing. So, but we're not sure if that's actually what's going to come out of this bill. Hopefully it will, but it's unclear that it will actually decrease the testing. And last but not least on the education front was charter school legislation, which established a charter school review commission as an additional authorizer of schools. This commission will comprise 7 appointed members and serve as an avenue for charter school operators to bypass school districts to obtain approval. I voted against this legislation as I believe we should be funding public schools for the benefit of everyone and not moving more resources into charter schools. Workforce housing and property insurance were 2 more issues that didn't get much attention. As you know, we are going to be going into a special session on property insurance, probably in the next, we haven't been told yet, but sometime in May. Preemption. This is one of the issues that is most concerning to me, which is one of the reasons I ran for the House in the first place. And of course, those bills were in front of us as well. The most disturbing one is Senate Bill 620, which gives private businesses the right to sue their local governing body over an ordinance or charter provision which causes that business to lose at least 15% of their profits. This will impact the ability of local governments to effectively respond to the issues facing their constituents, and of course I voted against that legislation. On the environmental front, there were other local preemption bills that I fought strongly against. And I'm not sure if you all heard about it, but there was one where they were trying to get rid of all the soil and water conservation districts. And that was the first part of the bill, was to get rid of all of them. And then they changed it where they kept them, but the people on the board have to be from the agricultural field. And right now, they can be engineers or any kind of person who is qualified to make sure that our water quality is good and all that. And my concern about having just agriculture is that their interests might not be the same as the rest of us. And I do believe they should have a presence on the board, but not be the whole board. And that, again, was something that was taken away without any referendum of the public, which we were trying to get. There was another one where there's a water authority board, and they are also elected officials who their job is to make sure water quality is good, and they were voted to no longer be in existence. They eliminated them, basically. And I tried to put an amendment on the bill to make it where it would go to the public as a referendum to decide whether they should get rid of them, but it was voted down. Let's see, other down here. So I've served on the Pandemics and Public Emergencies Committee, and what we learned in that committee is that water quality and clean water is the biggest risk to Florida. The House Representatives hired a firm to talk about it, and it was overwhelmingly. It wasn't the hurricanes, or it was water quality. So I had a bill that HB 561, which I worked on, and I actually got bipartisan support on it. It went, I had a Senate counterpart that it moved through the Senate through 2 committees and then stalled at that point. So that's something I really want to work on more. It's a bill that would bring the governor's Blue-Green Algae Task Force recommendations into fruition, and basically what it does is that you try to get more septic to sewer, which I know Maitland is doing a really good job at trying to get everyone over onto sewer, and that's something we need to do across the state to stop these blue-green algae blooms. So, as you know too, our state is growing rapidly, which is all the more reason that we need to focus on getting our septic to sewer across the state. Another big bill that you probably heard about was the net metering bill. That was another bill that I fought against, HB 741, and this adjusted the rate at which rooftop solar owners can get reimbursed for the extra energy they produce. This bill disincentivizes homeowners from installing solar, and it sets us back in the fight to transition to clean energy. This became a little bit of a problem in California only because so many people had solar on their housetops. And here in Florida, I believe it's 1% or less. And until we get penetration of at least 10, 15%, there's no need to stop this. Right now we're trying to get people to get on solar. And one of the other ideas they had was to grandfather in the people that already are on solar, have the solar panels for people that would get them in the next couple of years. And that just gives a reward to people who can afford to do it right now, and it doesn't give any incentive for people who are trying to afford to put it on their house. And by the way, the solar industry right now is 40,000 jobs and growing, increasingly growing. So that's about the end of my presentation. I would love to have any questions or comments. Before I end though, I told my aide that I wanted to have some more positive bills, and so we can go and search and see if we can find some. But one of them that we thought of was a bill that one of my colleagues had. It's actually a Republican woman colleague, and the bill was that you can't put grease in what are this called, the grease traps?
The drains.
In the drains. So I loved her bill. I went and told her, I just love your bill. Because I was at a baseball game for my kid, and I saw the people take all the hamburger grease from the hamburgers and hot dogs and pour it down the grate to the storm drain. And it just shocked me. I couldn't believe it. And then this bill has passed, so you're not allowed to do that anymore. Which is, I don't think you were allowed to do it in the first place, but now it's against the law. So if anybody has any questions.
Does anybody have any questions? Representative Roy Goffers?
I just got one. The funding that you said, is kind of, they're taking away from the schools. Where are they putting that funding to? They're taking it for private little projects, or?
Yes. Well, a lot of it's going to private school vouchers, and I am getting more information on that. I'll have a lot more information on that, but a lot of it is going to private school vouchers. And you might notice there's a lot of like little pop-up schools. If you drive down the road, you'll see one on the road, and it's usually on a busy street, and you don't see playgrounds in the background or anything like that. They're making money off of it. Of course, there are some good voucher schools. Of course, there's always that exception, but there's too many of them that are just making money off of it.
I have a question about the solar. So I know that they were talking about grandfathering in, and you talked about it a little bit. Is that part of the bill? Does that finally make it in?
Yes.
Yeah, but what is it? What is the year?
You got like 3 or 4 years?
Yeah, I believe it is 3 years. 3 years.
Yeah.
But obviously it doesn't incentivize it.
Yeah, it doesn't incentivize. And now, who knows if you can get the panels in time. There's just so many variables that would make it really difficult to get it within 3 years. And it shouldn't be the race to see who can get it the fastest.
Right. And so Local Business Protection Act, did that pass? SB 260?
Yes.
It actually passed. The governor signed it.
It has not been signed, but it has.
Okay, yeah, well, it definitely passed the House and the Senate. The governor has not signed it, so that was one of the reasons I hope that if you look at this bill and make your feelings known towards the governor about this, because I have a feeling that people don't realize how bad this bill is, and there's still a chance he could veto it.
Just so we don't know whether the governor's leaning one way or the other on this, because there has been.
There's been too much other distractions going on to know how he's landing on this particular one.
Right. Okay.
I had a question on the insurance, because I know I talked to you about it before, whether I should pay my bill that just doubled, but is there any hope that is there an agenda for what would the state do?
I think we should have taken it up during regular session. We knew there was a problem then, but there was no interest in it. So I'm not really sure why it's coming up now. And I know it's an extremely complicated issue. And so I have not heard anything new about it. I haven't heard any good solutions. We did have a bill that was going through, and it wasn't great, but it was better than nothing. And that pretty much stalled, right? That stalled in the...
Yeah, there was no.
But did it even go in the Senate? I remember it stalled in the House, but I don't know if it did. Yeah.
There was no agreement that there was a need to it, so.
Because I think it was just last year they sort of took the guardrails off, right, and stopped, like, you can only increase it so much each year, and so mine just essentially doubled. Like, it canceled me, threw me in a pool, and doubled it.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Just between now and July, so I don't think you're going to fix it. But
yeah, And I just read about all the increase in citizens' insurance, and I don't know how they're going to handle that too. So that's a big problem, and that's one of the biggest problems. That's what we should be focusing on.
Hey, Joy, I just have a question. I think I called you and left a message about it. I know this is a Senate thing, but did you ever hear anything about the whole rewrite of that tree code ordinance that?
Oh yeah, that was something I was working on. I actually sent someone your way because I had told him, I called him and said, Councilman, someone just cut down a huge tree, and my neighbor just cut down this huge tree. Why aren't you doing something about that? And he said, well, the state legislature wrote that law now that, yeah, I know there was some law that passed this past time that was better about, it was getting rid of diseased trees. And so it had nothing to do with the one that, the original canopy law that made it where cities couldn't regulate their canopies. But I'll get more information on that for you.
Thanks.
Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Well, thank you, Representative Goff-Marcel. Thanks for coming and sharing with us all your travails in the legislature. Maybe next time we'll have better good news.
Yes, I'll try to bring you better news.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. City manager, is there anyone business to report?
Nothing right now, no.
Okay. Well, let's move on to the consent agenda. Does any member of council wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? None. Does any member of the public wish to comment on items number 2 or 3 of the consent agenda? Seeing none, let's close that public period. And Yahara, would you please call the roll? Need a motion. Yes, you did.
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Did you? Then I'll second it, man. Yeah.
I think you seconded my motion, didn't you?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm happy to do so.
All right. You got it? Okay. Go ahead, please call the roll.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Warsaw,
Hi.
Councilmember Wild,
Aye.
Mayor Lowndes.
Aye. Okay, consent agenda is passed. With very little difficulty. Now is the public period. If any member of the public would like to speak on any item that's not actually on our agenda this evening, the public period is now open for comments.
Mayor, that's for Maha's presentation, we're just trying to get it up.
Okay, so this is not your...
Nope.
Okay, sorry, I thought you were going to... Is anybody else in the public? Anybody in the public out? Please approach the podium over here, and we have the microphone. And if you would, please introduce yourself and give us your address.
Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members, and peers. My name is Brian Catalano. I'm here mainly for the closure of Lake Maitland. A little history about myself. Can you hear me? Am I loud enough? I am a combat veteran and a registered nurse.
Mr. Catalano, could you give us your address, please?
Yes, it's 3618 Callaway Drive, Orlando, Florida, 32810.
Okay, thank
Around the
you.
corner. Literally.
Okay.
Yes, sir. I'd like to talk about a couple things of Lake Maitland and why I think that this is the worst possible time to close the lake that a lot of people pay for at this time at the beginning of summer, right? A lot of people go out to the lake, myself included, for psychological well-being. I told you I'm a disabled veteran. You got it. That lake, for me personally, is my quality of life. My friend Chris and numerous other friends that come out there a couple times a week, all right? We already talked about the paid membership, by the way. That's already gone until July 1st, I believe. So in between 2 May and 1 July, what do we do for that? Moreover, as a homeowner and somebody that's done my own work to my home, I can assure you that the productivity of the workers will be a lot better during the cooler months as opposed to dead summer, right? And also, as a nurse, I can tell you that there's some heat issues. Safety, everybody wants to be safe and whatnot. And there's heat exhaustion, there's all kinds of stuff that can occur with the workers during these times, and all that good stuff. Save money, finances. If they're doing it during the cooler months and they're more productive, then the city's going to save money, right? Because it can't possibly take as long as it would normally if they're actually being more productive. I'd like to move on to a gate. From what I understand, I have a friend that's a project manager, and she sent me the blueprints, and there appears that there's going to be 2 gates. I'm not an engineer or a contractor, but that's exactly what it looked like. I wanted to see if that was valid. Does anybody know offhand?
Well, I'll answer your questions when you're done with your time.
Okay,
We'll get around to you.
Well, moreover is what are the hours? I mean, because the lake right now is open. It's open, I think, from 8 in the morning to 11 at night, or 7 in the morning to 11 at night. Well, I can assure you that myself, probably twice a week that I'm out there, is there earlier than that fishing. So, I mean, if there's a gate, how's that going to work out with fishers that go on that lake? That's pretty much all I have to say.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Catalano. And after the public hearing, we'll take up some comments about what you raised.
Thank you.
Good evening, my name is Kyle Carter, 1044 Quinwood Lane, Maitland. On April the 6th, the city posted on its Facebook page that the Fort Maitland Park will be closed on May the 2nd, 1 week from today, for a 5-month construction project. That was the first notice I saw. It's less than 30 days notice to the public. I've spoken to several departments and the public information officer regarding the timing of the start of the project. They all indicated this is a capital improvement project that has been planned for several years. However, no one was able to provide me with a reason for doing the construction during the summertime, which is obviously the busiest time of the year for the boat ramp. It's my understanding that this project is funded solely by the city, there are no grant funds, and that there are no outside deadlines for the completion of the work. The public information officer did indicate that the project was going to begin earlier in the spring, but that there was some supply issue that caused the delay until May. Unfortunately, that was a specific reason as was provided. In other words, it was always planned that the ramp was going to be closed during the summertime. I respectfully ask that the city consider the timing of the start of the project and delay it until the fall. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carter. Does anybody else have any comments? Seeing none, let's close the public hearing, and perhaps a little background is in order just for what's going on with the ramp. It is a project that the council has been considering now for several years, and it's been on the CIP for several years. And it's gone through a lot of iterations, a lot of design issues, figuring out exactly how many slips are going to be there. Parking spaces for boats, and upgrading it generally to be more than just a boat ramp area, to actually have a park there with children's amenities as well, and improving the bathrooms and getting them up to snuff, and to move the police boathouse, which is really an unused item, and turn that into a deck that's an amenity for everybody to use. Also including paddleboard access and kayak access that is not currently available. So these were, the design of the whole thing was under some discussion for months and months, and it's been a long time coming. We finally got around to sending revisions back around until everybody was happy with what was going to be, get our arms around the scope of the entire project. And I guess it was in December that we finally decided to approve the plans and move ahead. It was never the intention to have construction during the summer at the outset. It was really just a matter of whenever we were able to get the design completed and to everybody's satisfaction. So it happened that the design was done, I guess, in time for that December meeting. So we were done in the late fall.
November.
And voted on it at that point. And at that point, once you've kind of approved the plans, you either move forward or you don't, I guess. You don't have plans and then sit on them and wait to schedule construction, 10 months hence or whatever it would be. So we moved into and elected to go ahead and award the contract and move ahead at that time. And it has come at an unfortunate time, I guess, that this is a heavy usage period for the boat ramp, and I understand it's going to be a big inconvenience for a lot of folks who are used to using that ramp, and for that, I'm sorry, but that's it. To change the plans at this point or to postpone them, I think everybody's familiar with the delays that construction is experiencing throughout the world at this point. And to delay the plans at this point and to put off ordering or to lay aside the items that we've already ordered and have on hand, we would probably lose our current construction outfit and would have to rebid it, and we would hope that the next folks would take up those plans and those materials and move ahead with it. Of course, that creates a lot of problems in and of itself, so I think what we'd be looking at is probably several $100,000 worth of changes that we would have to, and we should also factor into that inflation as well, because the items that we ordered were ordered some time ago, and we would lose all access to things we haven't ordered, and we could win with whatever inflation occurs between now and the time we order again. So at this point, it would be an extremely expensive operation to put off, and so I think we're, unless there's any appetite for putting it off at that level of pain, I'm not sure that we're going to move ahead on that. And Mr. Catalano, to your particular questions about the gates, I don't think we're changing the hours of operation at all. I think the hours of operation on the ramp will be the same as they are.
Yeah, they haven't been changed, but there are 2 gates.
Okay, but that will restrict access past the hours that we...
Past whatever the hours that, they could be established differently, but where they are right now, it would be locking that. And we've had a number of complaints about people going down there at 1 o'clock in the morning and launching and going to Dog Island. It's just not safe.
Right.
Not people fishing.
Right, so it shouldn't impact any access to the lake during daylight hours when people should be out there. And I think that was it for so there will be gates, but it will not adversely affect anybody's daytime activity. So Sharon, is there anything else? Anything I'm missing on that?
The only thing I would say is we have a signed contract with a contractor, and there would be liquidated damages. I'm sure they're not going to walk away from a signed contract. And unlike prior years, 2 years ago, it was 120 days, to acquire all the materials, and then you'd start. We're getting on the bids that we do 4 and 6 months, before they see all those materials and still wonder about whether they're going to get all those materials. We're seeing that on the utility projects that we've had. No one's giving you less than 4 months to acquire those materials. And the materials that we do have that we would have to pay for, when we bid it out, the next contractor doesn't have to certify. If we buy them and not the contractor, it's a whole different chain of custody. So it would be a very expensive overhaul to the project. And I think if you remember at the start, I think it was like a $1.2 million project with a $300,000 grant. And by the time we got to the fall, it was a $2 million project just because of inflation. So that took it to November, trying to value engineer it down to the amount of funding that we had in the Parks Trust Fund. And still was supplemented by the general fund. So it would eat up those funds, just trying to back out of what we've already contracted for and then rebid it out again.
Right. Well, so, I mean, I guess the bottom line is that, the good news is we're going to end up with a fantastic park, which is going to be more than just a boat ramp. It's going to be a park for everybody, and it's going to have, like I said, we have a playground, we have, upgraded bathroom facilities, which is going to retain the stormwater on site that is not currently retaining, which goes directly, dumps currently into the lake untreated, and that'll all change. It'll be, a park that we can all be proud of. The bad news is it's going to mean that, the boat ramp will be closed during the summer, and I guess there are other access points, very few, on the chain of lakes. I think Dinky Dock is probably the primary one. But I think that's where we are. Okay. All right.
May I ask a question?
A very brief question, yes.
Yes. So you said, excuse me if I may. You did say that that people go out there at 1 o'clock in the morning out to Dog Island. So I mean okay, I'm sure that's happened before. But you said the hours of operation for the boat ramp are not going to change to what they are now, maybe a little bit. So if I do want to go out there at 6:30 in the morning, the most appropriate time to be fishing, I won't be able to do that because of these gates, right?
I don't know that we've gotten into that level of detail on what's going to happen.
Right. Well, right now, people are not honoring the park hours, because there are park hours by ordinance.
Yes.
So you can call Jay Kahn, our Parks Director, because that's much more of an operational, what time we're going to get out there.
Okay, one last very quick question. Who's the contractor?
Burkhardt Construction,
Burkhardt? B-E-R-K?
H-A-R-D-T.
I got you.
It's B-U-R-K.
Yeah,
B-U?
Okay. Sorry.
No worries. All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you. All right.
So, let me just ask one.
No.
What's the estimated time of completion? That's all.
September.
September.
Sorry.
September?
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so, it'll be, what I think, well, they hope they can speed that up. I mean,
Yeah.
what they've given us is kind of the worst case scenario that, with all these long lead items and everything, that they're going to have to do a lot of infrastructure work, a lot of trenching and digging up pipes, and that is just going to take a lot. But hopefully, Burkhardt's done fantastic work for us, and, we hope they'll do fantastic work this time and expeditiously.
Okay.
Okay. First decision item we have is for the extension of the timeline for Maitland Art History. Sharon, would you please raise that?
Sure. Danielle is here from Art and History, and she's going to give you just a brief overview of the conceptual site plan that they'll be submitting. They're not approving the site plan, but this is why they're requesting the extension, because they want to get it turned into staff to start review of the site plan. And I'm happy to go over any of the history. I think everybody kind of understands where we are. It expired a year ago, but the agreement does allow you at your sole discretion to extend it. And they're asking for an extension through 2024.
All right. Thank you so much for allowing us to speak with you tonight and present. I'm Danielle Thomas, the Executive Director over at the Art and History Museums. So this evening we're asking for an extension for the permitting deadline outlined in the 2011 lease for beginning construction on the first phase of the conceptual site plan. But I do want to provide you with some background on it. First, some reasons why we want to do this project. I'll present the site plan that had been approved in 2016 and then go over our proposed changes. So we had 4 primary goals in putting together this plan. The first was to reassemble the original research studio property under our lease. The second is to better serve our community through enhanced facilities. The third is to fully restore the research studio to its original purpose. And the last is to increase financial sustainability for the center. And I'll talk about each of those in a little more detail. The reassembly of Andre Smith's historic research studio property was approved by council in 2016. And Andre Smith originally owned several parcels of land surrounding the research studio, which were divided up when the city acquired the property. Our goal in reassembling the original property is to better carry out Andre Smith's vision and then to better serve the community as well. In the image displayed here, it shows the parcels originally owned by Andre Smith outlined in green, and then the areas in blue show the land that was added back onto the lease when the site plan was approved in 2016. The second goal is to better serve the community through enhanced facilities. In 2016, the Board of Directors did modify the conceptual site plan and created a campus-wide master plan, but the changes to the plan that we're presenting this evening specifically relate to new education classrooms. And that will allow us to better serve the community in several ways, and the first is by increasing our capacity. Currently, our art classes are housed in rooms designed to be individual artist studios, so the classes are limited from 3 to 10 students. They're very small. This new plan will double that capacity and allow us to reach much more people that way. The buildings will also have greater accessibility and be entirely ADA compliant, which is really important for us. We have a lot of elderly students. The new buildings will give them parking directly in front of the buildings, which is particularly helpful during our nighttime classes. And finally, the new facilities will allow us to provide the people of Maitland and the surrounding communities with a first-rate arts education. Our current classrooms are in spaces that have been retrofitted for instruction. They were never meant to house classes. They were meant to hold one instructor. So these new buildings will be designed with optimal layouts and modern equipment, so they'll just provide a better overall educational experience. Our third goal in creating the plan is the restoration of the research studio, and this is the goal that's probably the most dear to my heart. It's incredibly rare for a historical site to still be operating in its intended purposes. Most sites are interpretive, they're museums, they're monuments. The research studio is unique in that it's still functioning with its original intent, which was to be a space for individual artists to pursue their craft. However, this is only true for a portion of the center. Our education classes are currently housed in an area known historically as the studio court, where 3 to 4 artists would come and live during the winter months and work. The additions of the new classroom restores the historical studio court back to individual artist studios, which in many ways fully restores the research studio itself. Very few designated historical sites are intact in this particular manner. So I want to again just stress how remarkable this is and just say that Maitland has something really special in having a site like that here. And the last goal in creating the site plan is increased financial sustainability. So by increasing the capacity of the classrooms, it'll allow us to generate greater revenue on the classes and aid in our long-term financial health. So those are the goals for the expansion. And in 2016, the city approved the conceptual site plan that you see up here, which includes a sculpture garden south of Packwood and then new facilities on the west side of the center with parking along Jackson Street. And I'll show you a close-up of that plan. You can see the buildings on the west side of the center. The original plan included 10,000 square feet of classroom space and a parking area for 56 spaces, and there's a small lawn off of Packwood Avenue. And now I'm going to go ahead and show you our revised site plan, which does fully comply with the city's new land development code. So in this plan, the new education studios will have approximately 6,000 square feet of space. The parking has been reduced to 38 spaces, and it's located off of Jackson. And you'll also know that there's more green space on the west side of the center. And this is based upon feedback from council in 2016 that you'd like to see more green space preserved, and this is something that we also agree with. Ultimately, we're hoping to install a sculpture garden in that area with spaces for shade and gathering. And I'm going to give you a closer view of that as well. So you'll see rather than build one large building, which is what the original site plan had called for, this has 3 separate buildings which will better complement the feeling and the dimensions of the historical site. One building will act as a small gallery, reception, and office area with shared restrooms. The second building will be dedicated to painting and drawing, and it's going to have a student capacity of 12 to 24 students. And then the third building is going to have 3 separate art studios. It'll have a ceramics studio, which will have a capacity of 12 students, and then a sculpting and a jewelry studio, which will have 8 students each. You can see there's a sidewalk ingress into a main plaza with bike racks to encourage pedestrian and bike traffic. The parking spaces will include a dedicated space for ride sharing, handicap spots right in front of the buildings, and a space for 2 electric vehicles. And we'll also be exploring how we can build with environmental sustainability in mind. And this includes exploring pervious parking, installing root vaults for the trees, and solar paneling. Stormwater will be treated with bioswales and overflow going into a vault system, and utilities will involve relocating the existing sewer line and power being undergrounded into the site. Now we have an architect on the project already. We've selected DLR. The footprint for the buildings have been established and they're now working on the elevations. And our goal with the new buildings is to complement but not compete with the historical site. The new buildings also won't present any conflicts with our National Historic Landmark status. And I'm also excited to share that the center did receive a generous legacy gift from a longtime supporter that, combined with our existing building funds, will be used towards the construction project. And so we're requesting the extension this evening. The 2011 lease agreement set a deadline of 10 years to have applied for the permits necessary to commence construction, which would have been in 2021. We experienced some delays primarily due to COVID, and we would like to request to extend to 2024. The extended deadline will allow for any revisions that need to be made as we move through the permitting and approval process. The initial deadline also stipulated that we invest $600,000 in the project, and we will be investing substantially more than that by the time they're completed. And we've been working continually towards this design and the deadlines, and I appreciate everybody's opportunity, or the opportunity to present this to you this evening, and look forward to answering your questions.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody have any questions?
I have a question.
Please.
Thank you, Danielle. I noticed in the request to extend that it just references 16B in the lease addendum, which relates to parcels 1 and 2, but it looks like the new conceptual plan is just related to parcel 1. So I just wanted to clarify that you're asking to extend us to parcel 1 only, or what the request is.
Ultimately to both. Part of the master site plan that the board worked on in 2019 includes an extension of event facilities where the Rotary Plaza is now, and hopefully some outdoor programming in that space as well. And then ultimately we would like to build new office space so that we can get the staff out of the research studio.
Those are more future plans.
And those are future projects.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'll just mention that Danielle and I had the opportunity to speak about this on Saturday when I came out to a printmaking event that you guys hosted, which was amazing. And so I do appreciate you putting up the new conceptual plans that have been updated, and I think that allayed my concern about the expansive amount of parking, and so I appreciate you putting that up there. But it's going to be an exciting opportunity to really add more space and to bring in more classrooms. What I wasn't quite understanding from the pictures, there's going to be, can you go back to that, to the conceptual drawing? Thank you.
Yeah.
So the classrooms that you've got here, I'm seeing you've got 3, or is it 4 classrooms? Are they split up like that as it is in the middle? Or?
It is, yeah. So there's 3 buildings, but 4 classrooms spread between 2 of them. So the building in the upper right-hand corner, that would be a small gallery for student work, as well as the donor who has contributed to the project's work. The offices will be in there, and the shared restrooms are in there. The building directly below that, that's just one large space. That's the painting and drawing classroom, and that's because that discipline just needs a lot more people spread out. And then the building that's kind of right in the center, the left-hand building is the ceramic studio, so that takes up about half of that space. And then the 2 smaller buildings are the jewelry and the sculpture, which have a lower student-to-teacher ratio, so they're smaller spaces.
Are any of these going to be able to double as like a lecture studio or something where you can?
Yeah, we're hoping, especially the larger room for painting and drawing, that's going to be ideal for that. We're also hoping to be able to use it for our field trips. Right now we don't really have a good place for students to come in when they visit with school, so this will allow them a place where they can be messy. We're also hoping to put in projectors as well, just to enhance the learning experience so that everybody can follow along with the instructors a little bit better. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else? Well, and then I guess we should ask if anybody in the public has anything to add to this discussion. Let's open up the public hearing. Anybody? Mr. Randolph?
Good evening, Bill Randolph, 331 White Oak Circle. I've been on the board at the Art Center for 12 of the last 13 years. Created the original master plan for this site. And again, we were kind of under that lease agreement, thinking that once it got amended back in 2012, we had a 2012 deadline. And staff informed us that no, we really should have done that in 2011. So that's why we're here tonight. It's really more of a bookkeeping issue. I would like to point out that we're going to try and make this as environmental friendly as possible, and possibly even be a demonstration project so the city has something to show other people. Tree vaults are a new concept. We worked on a parking lot out at the turnpike for the DOT, and we did tree vaults out there. It gives trees the ability to grow better in a parking lot environment. They don't like lime rock. It kills the trees, it stunts their growth, and after almost 30 years, the trees out of the turnpike never got past 25 feet. And these are all oaks. So we want to try and do that here where we can show some things, showcase some things that helps the city as well. Parking, when we did the GMB project, which we put about $750,000 into that project, which is a city building, but we use donor funds as well as grant funds, and donated engineering and architecture time to do that project. So we're committed to the city and the site. And again, as Danny alluded to, we've got a donor now. We were able to use, through investments while they were good, we grew our fund back up to over $500,000, and so that will be invested in this along with our donor funds. Again, we're going to try and do EV parking there, so we have at least 2 spaces. Our requirement for parking is a little bit less than 38. However, when we did GMB, we committed to the city that we would try to cure some of our parking woes back then. I know a lot of people go to the center, and those perpendicular spaces there are non-conforming spaces. So those really aren't counted towards parking spaces in our count. Most of our parking is through shared lots. The public lot, the 19 lot spaces down at the lake. So we'll be working to try and secure a shared parking agreement with the church. So we're trying to do what we can to keep and cure some of our parking problems over there. So this is part of that effort.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Randolph. Is anybody else interested in this item tonight? Let's close the public period, and a motion would be in order.
I will make a motion to extend the deadline for site plan submittal, permitting, and completion of the construction for the additional city-owned parcel 1 to December 1, 2024.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Ms. Harlow, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Harrison?
Aye.
Councilmember Warsaw?
Aye.
Councilmember Wild?
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie?
Aye.
Mayor Jones?
Aye. Okay, you will have an extension. And thank you for coming in. That was a great presentation. Our next item is extension of petition number 2019-03 regarding 473 Keller Road.
Good
And
evening,
would you please-
Mayor and Council. My presentation isn't that fascinating, so I'll try not to put you to sleep tonight. But it is along the theme of what we've heard tonight. It's a request for an extension of a site plan due to things like pandemics and supply chain issues. So the property here is located on 473 South Keller Road. It's known as the 473 Keller Road condos. The site was approved council approved a plan development back in 2019 in January. Along with that came a PD development plan that was actually a lot more detailed than the concept plans that you usually get. It laid out a lot of the development criteria such as the elevations, the materials, the parking, lighting, all sorts of stuff that as this was going through, we were in the process of writing the new code. So a lot of the things that we knew were being proposed in the new code was actually incorporated into this PD. So they got in that PD development plan a lot of the things that we were asking for in today's code, including sustainability measures to meet the points of our sustainability code that we were proposing. So back after the PD was approved in November of 2019, staff approved a site plan that was consistent with that PD development plan. It laid out everything. And the following year, the staff approved the site construction permit for the infrastructure improvements. However, due to the pandemic as well as supply chains and things like that, the applicant wasn't able to move forward that quickly. And looking at Chapter 7587 of the LDC that was in place at the time this was approved, site plans expired after 2 years if buildings had not began vertical construction. However, the code does allow council to grant a 1-year extension where that deems necessary. So in this case, again, the site plan, because the site permit expired, that then expired the site plan. The site plan was implementing the PD development plan, which was very detailed and laid out a lot of the entitlements that they have, regardless of the site plan is extended or not. So staff is recommending we support that request for a 1-year extension for the site plan so that the applicant can proceed forward. Discussions with the applicant. He has got things in line now. He's got the staffing. He's got everything in place to move forward. He would have to come back in for a new site construction permit for the infrastructure and horizontal, and then come in following that for the building permits. But he's ready to move forward. We talked to him about his site plan and what the entitlements were. The PD development plan, he's actually wanting to put in the EV parking spots as well, even though he wasn't required to. He knows that is something that is in demand in the market, so he's agreed to meet the standards of the new code of the EV parking spaces. So with all of that, staff is supporting his request for a 1-year extension. The applicant is in the audience and can answer any questions if you have any for him. Otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Well, I have a question. So this was developed under the old, this was planned under the old land development code, but you're confident that it really meets our new code? Is that with regard to open space and everything, all the other upgrades that we have?
Absolutely. Because the PD development plan locked in a lot of those entitlements, a lot of those things in there were stuff that's in the new plan. Pretty much everything. There's not a whole lot there. There's very little you would see different, if anything, especially after agreeing to put in the EV parking spots. That was the one thing that really was the difference.
Anybody else have any questions?
So the green space on the old LDC and the new one, what we would have to have, is that the same?
That's the same.
So
25%.
It wouldn't change on that?
Correct. PD's required 25%, old code and new code.
You're giving the presentation, but this is applicant generated.
It is the applicant's request, correct.
Any questions? Let's open it up to the public. Anybody from the public have any comment about this item? Now's the time. Seeing none, let's close the public hearing. Anything further we need to discuss? Anything from Mark, Sharon? A motion would be in order.
Well, I'll move to approve a 1-year extension for the approval of the site plan for the applicant to proceed to site construction and building permits.
Motion?
Second.
Yes, second. Howard, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Warsaw,
Aye.
Councilmember Wild, Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Mayor Melham.
Aye. Okay, we have another extension here.
This one's actually not an extension. This is a request for a reduction in the fine for a code violation off of 200 North Swoop Avenue. So this case, again, located at Swoop Avenue between Horatio and George. It's the building next to the Montessori school. Why it's coming out here. Give you a little background on the case history. The monitors will behave. In 2020, in June 2020, staff received a code complaint, and which was initiated, which staff went out to research and found a violation of the property maintenance code for a variety of things, including trash, overgrown vegetation, and mildew. So the applicant was, or the property owner at the time, was contacted and was given some time to correct the violation. And hearing nothing for a while, a notice of violation was issued in December of 2020. The notice of violation was issued because of non-compliance. So hearing none after that notice of violation, and the time it went to the special magistrate in January of 2021, where the special magistrate found the property in violation and imposed a compliance date of January 21st of 2021, or else a fine of $250 a day would be issued. So seeing no compliance, in April 7th, it went back to the special magistrate where he ruled that there was violations, they were not corrected, and imposed that $250 a day fine. Staff was contacted on April 13th by Mr. Eddie Baird, the applicant who is requesting this fine reduction. The fine currently sits at $116,500 as of today. So just as a little next steps, should council grant the reduction, what would happen after that is that Mr. Baird would bring the site into compliance. He has got a contract to purchase the property. So he would bring the site into compliance first, and then he would contact code enforcement, who would then go out there, conduct a site visit, and make sure and confirm that the site is in compliance. Once it's confirmed it's in compliance, staff would calculate the reduced fine amount at the date that he brought it into compliance. And then Mr. Baird would pay that fine, of course, as he's asking to do, because everybody wants to do that. And then the city would issue a satisfaction of lien, so then he can close on the property. So that would happen, would be the next step, should council reduce this fine. Staff does recommend a reduction of down to 10% of the accrued fines once the violations are cured. We feel that this amount would adequately recoup city's expenses in pursuing the code case and result in the property being brought into compliance, which of course is the number one goal of code compliance, is to get things under control and in compliance. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. Mr. Baird's also in the audience, and he's happy to answer any questions as well if you have any directly for him.
Okay, thank you, Dan. So I'm looking again at the requested motion, and it looks like the fine will be reduced once the violations are resolved, right? So
Correct.
we're not going to get caught in a situation where it might, for whatever reason, things fall through, and we reduce the fine and then nothing happens.
They would be reduced and calculated the day it was cured.
Okay.
It's kind of the chicken and the egg, because he can't really close on the property until they're cured, and he can't really cure them until he knows it's going to be something to move forward and close on.
Can you put an outside date on
that? As far as when it...
Well, because it says it's 10% whenever you cure it.
Correct.
So essentially that's just a...
But he's under contract.
He's under contract, so the idea is that if council...
You got to cure it by...
Yeah, well...
We'd give them a ton of grace period. I'm just saying it should have an end date, because if not, you're just essentially saying whatever the fine is 10%.
Correct, and his intent, he already has contractors lined up, ready to do the work. If council does reduce it tonight, I believe he has the contractors out this week or early next week, and he'll have it cured. He plan on closing on the property in May, so he wants to act fast. He wants to...
I'm okay with saying September. I'm not saying we should, I'm just saying that there should be some, because if not, it's just as written.
Yeah, Dan,
Am I reading it right? If not, it's just an automatic 90% reduction. Maybe I'm reading it wrong.
Well, it's a reduction of when he cures it, so if he doesn't cure it, the fine keeps running.
And it's particular
Right,
to
but
this
whenever he
applicant.
cures it, it's 10%.
Of that date, correct.
Understood.
But he's saying if it doesn't go, if he doesn't handle it by a set date, then that 10% doesn't work and it just stays the full.
Correct. He wouldn't be able to close on the property without clearing clean title, and that would include the lien on the property for the full amount of the fine, no?
I think we're missing the point. The point is that if you don't, and I don't really want to beat this up, but if you don't put an outside limit, what you're trying to do here is encourage performance, which I think is what you're trying to do. Get this thing closed. If you don't say that there's some end date to it, then what's the incentive to get it closed? I understand.
You mean an end date to closing?
No, an end date to when this 90% reduction burns off. If you don't fix it by,
But he's only willing to buy the property because he is going to cure the violation before he closes, right? He's not going to close.
what if he doesn't close?
Well, then this is only, as Lori said, this is only specific to this buyer, right? So we're
I
only.
think I can fix all this if you'd like to hear from me.
Yeah.
No, I'm interested to hear, I'm not interested in, I'm interested to hear the actual consensus, because I was told before that you actually don't, this is against the property, correct? It's not, we're not doing this to benefit the purchaser, this is a lien against the property, unless I'm
It's a lien
misunderstanding.
against the property, but we're reducing the violation for this particular purchaser.
That was not what I thought we had this again before, and we said that it wasn't against, it's not against a person, it's against the property.
Liens are touching the property.
The liens are.
So you can't reduce this for a buyer.
But the motion is to approve the prospective property owner's request.
That doesn't, but it's reducing the lien against the property.
Okay, so we say all this expires September 1st.
I'm trying to understand, and again, I'm not questioning this particular buyer. I'm sure he's going to do it. I'm interested in this process because I thought we had it once before, and we were trying to tie it to a specific thing, and we were said, no, you can't. It's a lien against the property. Any vote that we have or action we take is specific to the property.
Well, there are ways to, let me, if I understand what I think you're getting at, and I think I understand the proposal, which is the property owner says, there's a lien against property. I'd like it to be reduced, and if it is reduced, then I'll buy the property and I'll fix it. That's my understanding. Have I got that right? Okay. So a way to accomplish this goal, where you don't have to give up anything until what's needed to be accomplished is accomplished, is to agree that if the amount that you're talking about is voted on and reduced, that it is contingent on closing on the property, the thing being violated, and if he does all that and then pays the reduced amount, then and only then will the city satisfy the lien. So, because the satisfaction is what clears the property. Now the question is, which is for the putative purchaser, if you do not satisfy the lien till after the closing, that would cause him or it to have to put up in escrow an amount sufficient to cover the whole lien, subject to getting that money back if everything that we said is true. So that's how it could go mechanically, but I don't know if that would satisfy this particular person. That's how it would work.
Right, so what the requested motion is to reduce, so it really, although the prospective property owner has requested this, it actually is going to benefit the current property owner. So it is as if the current property owner has come to us and said, guys, knock my lien or my violation amount down to 10% of the current value, and once these violations are resolved, what this says is once the violations are resolved, they're down to 10%. So that is irrespective of any closing.
Yeah, and and until then, we wouldn't issue a satisfaction.
Right. So it looks like the motion needs a little more.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand it, because I think we're not tying it to a purchase, it's really a 10% reduction.
Down to 10%, 90%.
So are you just looking for a date certain, like if,
Yeah, you can put a date on it.
a date would pretty much, I'm assuming,
Right,
Mr.
but
Baer, maybe?
but once the violations have been resolved.
but
they're
only
down to
if cured by date certain.
That's what I'm thinking is the right, is the better. But I just think because it is what it is. And again, I'm more interested because I think we had this come up before, and we were trying to figure out how to mechanically do this, and this is a little bit different, I think, than the last time we did this.
So the last time we did it, there was a running citation that they went to the magistrate and asked to stop the running, and what council did is said, we will reduce the fine, however, if it's not done by this date, the clock starts ticking again and the fines start running again. In this case, the fines are still running, there's no stop in the fine.
Right.
So but I'm sure, and Mr. Baer could speak to this, but I would imagine you'd be okay with setting a date of the end of May to have it cured or else.
Please come up, but I have one more observation before you take the floor. So, I mean, if Mr. Baer were to come in tomorrow with a weed whacker and some Clorox and get it down, clean it up, then the fine is down to 10% of its current value. but he's still got 3 months to go. So when do the fines quit accruing?
So
You got 3 months to go
Once
to
he's
closing.
cured.
yeah, as soon as the violation is cured.
Oh, he's cured and we're done, and so then nothing else happens.
Unless you sign it again.
Approved by
The city.
code
By code
enforcement.
enforcement, right.
Right. And if he doesn't close, and we have not got this extra language in there, then we will have knocked down the fines to 10% and we'll just wait until.
Have compliance.
Yes, we'll have compliance and we'll wait until.
We'll have compliance, and if he
Until
doesn't
now,
close,
and then we start over.
if he doesn't close, it's
Yes.
And
probably go
that
back.
was the issue the last time, was I believe that the issue was that we were gonna have to refile, and then it was a new case, fine started over again.
Right.
And that was, I think, what we were dealing with last. Again, I just think it's, I'm learning how we do this, because I think mechanically, there's a, which comes first, and how do you stagger this out?
Mr. Baird, do you have anything to add to this?
Good evening, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Eddie Baird, 461 Manor Road. Pleasure, Mr. Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council, City Manager, Mr. Mattis. So yeah, everybody knows this heap that's been sitting back there behind Publix it's been abandoned for 10 years. It's got, literally has holes in the roof. There's no HVAC running, the outdoor area units are still on top. There's no electric, there's no water in place. It's growing all kinds of microorganisms in various areas. It needs help badly. The good news is it was built in 1968 and it's really cool. The facade is pretty cool looking. So I have partnered with a local, very high-end builder who will probably be here in one of these meetings. He and I are going to collectively revitalize and refurbish this property. We have no intent at all just knocking a fine down, rounding up the parking lot, and then flipping it and taking it elsewhere. We want this to be a beautiful professional office space. We fully intend to make that happen. I live right here behind Luke's. My wife and I got here in 2015, and obviously have seen a lot of changes, vastly for the better in this city during the time that we've lived here. And this building has so much potential, but it looks to be one of the last vestiges of what the town looked like when we got here previously. So we see an absolute ton of potential in it. The story I've come to learn is that the woman who used to own the building, I believe, ran a special needs school out of it for a number of years. I understand that for the past 10 years or so, for one reason or another, the school had not been in operation, been vacated, and then from what I understand, the lady passed away a year or two ago, and her son, who was the trustee of the estate, is a practicing veterinarian in Tallahassee, and otherwise has no connections down here to the city. So I saw it as a win-win, personally, as a resident of the city, raising my young son there. I think the city can frankly use some pretty cool-looking professional office space, and that's frankly what we intend to do with it. We want it to be the coolest looking office space, hopefully Class A, if we can get it that far, in the city, literally. So that's our intent. If you got a $112,000 lien sitting out there, it'd have to be taken care of closing at some point, if and when that may occur, I guess. But I'm ready to mobilize. I've got a proposal. All I have to do is green light it. I'm just going to go out there for 2 full days, clean the place up, pressure wash it, get rid of the wasp nests, knock all of the weeds and everything else out of it, and then we intend to close no later than the end of May. Shortly following which, we would like to work with staff again and be back here on some building permits and some improvements for what will become a beautiful build out. But regardless of whether council has questions or otherwise, we really appreciate the consideration, particularly the very helpful efforts that have been set forth by staff so far. So appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Baird. So it looks to me like, the way this is framed, maybe we don't have that much of a problem. So if you take care of the problems and we're in compliance, and we encourage compliance and we have compliance, the risk that we take is that nothing happens and we never close, something else happens, and then it will come back out of compliance. But at that point, we can file again and start all over. But that said, if we want an outside date as well, we don't have a problem with that. But that's kind of what I see.
Whatever makes council most comfortable, I'm happy to work with council staff and whoever else.
But I'm trying to think of a way that you don't have to come up with another $100,000 in escrow, perhaps.
That would be nice.
Be helpful, yeah.
That'd be nice, Mr. Mayor.
But, that's up to us. Anybody? Yeah. Okay.
So do you want to put an end date on this thing, or are you happy to just?
I don't, on this one, I don't really.
But I think that's a discussion going forward, maybe in another meeting, but I think some consistency.
Yeah, I just think we should
Process.
figure out how we do these, and if we're gonna sort of look at trying to encourage, I think what this is doing is encouraging people to redevelop something that's currently got a code enforcement issue. How do we deal with that mechanically to encourage that, to make sure that it gets done? But we're giving up a hammer on some of these, on a current property owner, because you've got this big lien, and it's obviously the one that's encouraging performance. When you knock it down to 0 or 10% or whatever, then you obviously lose some of your ability to motivate proper behavior. So it's just a mechanics thing, but I think it's also one that we want to make sure we're encouraging the remedies. So.
Okay. Let's take some public comment. Does anybody from the public have any comment on this particular item? Opening public comment period. Closing public comment period. Any further discussion? And if not, motion to be in order.
I'll make a motion to approve the requested, I'm not going to say perspective. I'm going to approve the request to reduce the fine ordered by special magistrate on January 13, 2021 for the property located 200 North Sloop to a 10% of the accrued fine once the violation is resolved to the city's satisfaction to cover the administrative costs of the city.
I will second.
Motion and a second. Yahara, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Wall,
Aye.
Councilmember Guthrie,
Aye.
Councilmember Hall Harrison,
Aye.
Councilmember Worsel,
Aye.
Mayor Miller.
Aye. Okay, thank you, Dan. Good luck, Mr. Baird.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. City Council.
I'm excited about this. My kid almost got beamed by a tiny piece of debris in the sidewalk right outside the building today, so.
Fall down.
I don't know, it was like part of the tree had fallen down, but it was like in the middle of the sidewalk, and we were walking from Montessori to the music school, so. And, you know, she's fine, she's not watching where she's going.
Okay, our next item this evening is charter review questions, and we should also, would note at this point, we're in the closing hours of Councilman Wild's birthday. So
Yeah.
we want to make sure that he doesn't spend his entire evening.
It's a big day.
It's Dan's birthday.
Yeah, it's Dan's birthday too.
Oh, my God.
Really?
You guys have the same
Advances
birthday.
anniversary. That's my anniversary.
Let's just go home.
Let's go. Let's go.
It's happy hour.
We don't need to deal with this tonight. Can we table this? I know you've been all waiting to talk about the charter again.
And we do have the chairman of the charter review commission here, and
Just
he's
like
a
Lynn
captive. He's a captive at this point. But we can take this up tonight, or we can push it, or?
Well, if I could just, I mean, again, it doesn't have to get done tonight, but if I could
Okay.
just at least cover it, and then it gives you something to think about, and I would ask Cliff to maybe draft an ordinance between the next meeting, if I could just get a little guidance, we can
Okay.
tweak the language. So there are three items that were left. Gender neutral language, said yes, we're going to place that on the future ballot. Elected official salaries, we removed that from consideration. We had vice mayor succession. And where that got, at the very end, because I re-listened to it, was let's just do the easiest thing, which is to remove that last sentence, which is in conflict, which basically says, if the mayor, for whatever reason, vacates, absence, resigns, then the vice mayor will take over, be sworn in as mayor, and then you would appoint a resident to that seat, that open seat, until the next election. So by just removing that last sentence, it goes back to the way it was the last time it happened. If that's kind of where we ended up. We talked a lot of scenarios, and so that's how I would send it over to Cliff to look at the ballot language. Term limits, the way that one was left was, again, everyone seemed fine with the extra waiting period for a mayor who's termed out versus a council person. So council person who served 2 terms could come back, run for the mayor's office, and only sat out sort of until the next seat. The mayor, however, would have to wait would not qualify to run until 1 year after his term expired, her term expired. So that's what gives it sort of the 2-year waiting period, because that they cannot qualify to run, as opposed to they're not eligible until. So I think that clarifies it. You just can't qualify because you haven't been out a year past there. So if that's where everyone still wants to go, basically keeping it the way it is now, just cleaning up some inconsistencies in the election cycle, regular election, some of that language that was not defined.
Right. So as I recall, the real issue with that is a council person who wanted to run for mayor would not have to sit out and go
Correct.
directly into that line. A council person who had 2 terms and wants to run for council again has to wait a year before qualifying. So they're out for.
Well, it's not exactly how that's happened, because they wouldn't take office till a year after they were out. So they couldn't run for their old seat, but they could run in the next council election.
So
That's
Vance
like-
could have 2 terms in his seat and then
And then
qualify.
he would be basically sitting out a year before he took office again, but he could qualify. That is what Bev Reppinen, that was how it came down.
That's how a few
Yeah.
people had asked. So
And the difference, though, that I was getting at was there's a year for council people, there's 2 years for mayor.
For
So a
term
mayor
mayor.
who's presided for 2 terms, he has to just wait, well, I guess. He's
So
gotta-
2 terms, he clearly would not qualify to run for mayor again. He's
Right,
starting
because he's
out.
still got to wait for that, but to
He
go back
wouldn't
to
be
council.
eligible in the next council election
So we would have to wait 2 years to go to council.
to qualify. yeah.
So the debate was, is that fair? Do we want to treat council people like mayors, vice versa? And I think that the Charter Review Commission last time, were very clear that they wanted that difference, that
Yes.
they wanted them to be treated differently.
Yes.
Um,
This would just be clarifying language. It
Okay.
really wouldn't be amending how it's done.
Right.
Because I think there was some, what if I leave my term early as mayor, and so this language, I think, covers everything.
I just always thought of it as you're really kind of penalizing one person, because if I wanted to serve, I mean, really, in our city, the only difference between John and myself is we both get a vote, and, John has no really extra power than having to go and hold that gap. But yet, at the same time, he's going to be penalized for taking that role as mayor, as to me just being a council person. So if I want to serve again, I can go through it, but if I'm a mayor, I can't.
Right.
So
And that's
it's
the kind of the pure policy issue, and it's debatable on either side. I guess one of the other concerns was, because the prior Charter Review Commission had been so clear and the voters adopted that differentiation, did this Charter Review Commission want to go back and undo that and say, we understood you wanted to last time, but we want to take it back, and so put that back on the referendum and see if we want to undo what we did last time around. And that's kind of absent any policy, position. It's just really whether or not it's time to have that voting. So that was an added layer of what the policy was.
Question is, should a council member have to stay out in 2 years also? I mean, if we're looking to bring more people in and rotate who's coming through here, that would be probably the better idea.
So let me ask Sharon, what do you want to hear from us tonight?
Well, this is the line, as of our last meeting when we discussed it, it went on for a good period of time. In the end, it came down to, we don't want to change it, just make it clear, clean up that election cycle, regular election, to say what it says. I mean, ultimately, you guys are the decider anyways, if somebody wants to argue it, but it does say, it did create some concern.
Anybody else from this end? I know that you turned into a pumpkin.
No. The restaurant we were picking food up from is closed, so she's had to go further distance. So I bought myself in 5 minutes. But,
Cliff can draft it up that way. Ultimately, it's an ordinance that's going to come to you. You get 2 more meetings to discuss it. Maybe give it more thought. Because if you just say what you want, Cliff can draft it. So you just say what it is you want, 3 of you at least, and then he can draft it. Where it was left at the last meeting was just simply make it consistent with what the 2012 Charter Commission had intended at the time. And there was, there's reasons why. For example, if you're a council member for 2 years, you can run in the next mayoral election because depending on your seat, that could punish you if you had to stay out, right? If you had to stay out a year. So, I mean, I think there was a lot of thought put into, you know, scenarios, because you know you can scenario it to death.
Right.
But
so for tonight,
more thought. Yeah.
We're just going to ask to move ahead to Cliff to do some drafting, and then it's going to come back to us in ordinance form. So we're going to have 2 more bites of the apple.
Yes. So that's going to give more thought to that, and then the runoff. So the commission, Maria had brought it up, and we had all said it hasn't happened since the 90s.
Never ever be.
Everybody's elected unopposed, and so councilperson Wurtzel got to live through it.
As long as a rule is named after me.
The Wurtzel rule?
Yeah, but the rule of 3, the Wurtzel rule.
Oh, I like the Wurtzel rule.
The
I definitely, go ahead.
The only thing I noticed in the draft, like the draft
Yeah.
language was drawing lots. To me, that makes sense if there's 2 candidates, but if you have more than 2, which is the way it's written, that seems potentially.
Let me explain. I don't know if this thing.
No, it's not working. You can talk loud.
Okay, so anyway, yeah, that has become a term of art. It is exactly the term I think that's used in the Florida statutes
Yeah.
if you don't otherwise provide for it. But if you actually dig a little further, drawing lots can be everything from pulling a name out of a hat to literally drawing lots to fill in the blank. So as long as it's a random opportunity based on chance, it qualifies as drawing lots. I know this because we had a direct tie in Mount Dora, and then one of the reasons I'm no longer in Mount Dora is because when I told him how that works and it didn't go for the guy, well, it's another story, but he got elected the next time around and he didn't like me. But the bottom line is, that's the answer. So it's a term of art now. It's not the way it used to be. It means straws.
Well, I researched it and even brought up a game of pool actually, but I was more concerned with that there were 3 candidates and 2 got 2 of the 3 tied directly. To me, it didn't instinctively seem fair to draw lots for 2 people. So I actually, because there's a whole 3rd candidate or 4th candidate or 5th candidate, but that was just my.
In that situation, we might say, okay, we're going to put numbers in a hat, and then the one with the lowest number is going to get the seat, or something like that. In other words, as long as it's by random chance, that's what you need to accomplish. But I'll put whatever you want in there, but that's the answer.
I think majority seems to make sense. Then when we have 8 people run and someone wins by getting 18%, somebody else will have to revisit whether or not that's fair. But I think until faced with that problem, I think we should live with a majority. But that's just I think the majority issue, like I said, the majority issue comes to play when you have a lot of candidates and then somebody wins by 5 votes because they get 17.5% and someone gets whatever. So, I mean, there's pros and cons, but I certainly think to avoid an election, a 3-person runoff, a 3-person race, we should go with majority.
Yeah, the highest number of votes makes the most amount of sense to me too.
Cliff can draft 7 versions.
Yes, 7 versions and all games of chance. Absolutely no problem.
I like the idea of playing pool. And if you got multiple candidates, you have to have like a bracket system or something like a pool.
Play 9-ball.
Okay, so if everyone's good, we'll work to get that drafted for the next council meeting. That's have an introduction.
Right. Let's open it up to the public real fast though, because I know that we have at least one interested member of the public.
Good evening again. Bill Randolph, 331 White Oak Circle. Vice Chair on the former Charter Review Commission and Chairman on this one. And what I've learned is you can scenario the hell out of this stuff and still not come up with something that's accurate. And an example, I think I was the one that asked Maria, how many times have we had this scenario before? Oh, it's been a long time ago. So we didn't consider it. And then Ms. Wurtzel comes along and we actually get her in by 3 votes. And that may or may not have happened had it not been for some citizens pushing people. So I'm in favor. I think, the bigger question is, what does that runoff cost to the city? And again, in this case, you have to activate the supervisor election, get all this stuff done. And we're not the only city in the county and the only election going on. So it puts a burden on them too. puts a burden on our staff. I think we just simply have to go to whoever gets the majority votes wins. And, you know, I could sit there and I guess we could say, well, it's never going to happen where it's 50-50. Who knows?
Well, you just jinxed it.
Well, I think we did that before, so. But nonetheless, I think that's in the best direction. The big question on the election cycle really came down to when is qualification, when do they seat? So April they seat. That's really the end of their term. And so because you have to sit out a year, you can't really qualify in January. And I think that even affects council. So I'd have to go back and look at the language again of how that's written. I think it's almost or about a year. Is that what we said?
One of them is based on cycle and the other is based on the election. I think that's the way it goes. And because of that difference in terminology, election cycle means you got to get all the way to the end, where next regular election is literally when there's the next regular election. And that's why there's a difference in what happens with the mayor versus councilmen or council people based on the way it's written.
So I think that the most difficult part that the Charter Commission had was trying to discern between those two pieces of language. So if that could be clarified, I think that's going to help it out in the future.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you for doing all you did on the Charter Review Commission in no time. Let's close the public period. Assuming yes. Close the public period, and a motion to be in order.
We'll make a motion to provide direction to staff to get with our drafting unicorn to draft an ordinance to do whatever it is we're doing. Oh gosh, I know I
You know what?
Are we
You know
giving
what?
direction?
I don't know. Do we need a motion before I?
I think I got enough direction and
Okay.
we can direct.
What, was it so terrible?
No, that motion was so good that we decided we didn't need it.
Yeah. You couldn't even second that motion.
You can't even second whatever that was.
It's too good.
All right.
All right.
An ordinance is forthcoming.
All right, but
Thank you,
I
Travis.
think Jay, to your point, it'll come back to us a couple times. We'll have substantive debate.
But I gotta say, I do appreciate the Scottish reference to the unicorn.
Unicorn Scottish?
Oh yeah, that's their. That's Scotland's mascot or animal.
All right. Okay, we are at the point of the agenda where we ask for the city attorneys, the city managers, and council members' reports if anybody has them.
I just have one, and that is to tell you that true to form, after accepting us accepting a settlement proposal, and me communicating that back to the lawyer and saying all I need is a settlement agreement, he said, I'll get back to you. And so we keep keeping the money for, I guess, as long as we keep the money until he decides to give me a settlement agreement. Here we are. They don't want it that bad.
All right, nothing from Peacock or anything from?
Just the hearing is coming up the next month, and when it does, I hope to put it to bed for good, but, you know, they're pretty determined, we'll see.
All right, the city manager, any?
So I just want to remind you about May 7th, or this Sunday's Farmers Market. There'll be some special events for Earth Day here on Independence Lane and in the park. So, and giving away some small trees as well.
How many trees did we give away last week?
50.
All of them.
All of them.
And quickly, I was down there at 11 o'clock and they were done.
Cool. Good job.
Okay, is that it, Sharon?
Yes. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We have the strategic planning, so everybody's got that on their calendar.
Right.
Hopefully Lori sent out just some, if you want to organize your thoughts and the agenda, but it's flexible.
Okay. Anybody else, any member have a?
I would just like to say I went to the Easter bunny party up at Maitland Community Park. It was amazing. It was absolutely phenomenal, Jay. Your team is amazing. Jessica is a breath of fresh air. She's such a hard worker. That was the turnout was exceptional. There were people there. There were so many kids. It was so well done. The Easter egg hunt was a lot of fun. Everybody was having a wonderful time, and so many people just complimented us on how great we did. And it was a phenomenal event. So I know that we oversubscribed in terms of how many people we expected to show up, but you know, the more we continue to do these events, the more we show why we are a phenomenal place for families to live. And I think that a lot of that credit goes to our Parks and Rec team for everything you guys are doing. So thank you.
You're here. All right. Well, for good boy,
I'll save it for next time.
okay.
Yeah, I talked to Amy on the Lakes Advisory Board. She's part of the river cleanup. They pulled out 177 pounds of course, wet trash out of Lake Sibilia last weekend. So it's still problematic, and I hope before I leave here, that's something we can cure or reduce. The other thing is, June 8th was my birthday. I was here for Valentine's Day. I'm here for my anniversary. August 8th is my wife's birthday, and I think I saw a schedule. We have a meeting that day. I will not be here, so everybody knows. I will not be here. So that's it.
Lori, anything?
Corks and Forks was great at the venue on Lake Lily. That was awesome. And I had a chance to visit Fredster's, Adrian's Bar and Grill on the west side of Maitland, one of our newest businesses. It was also great. So people should go and support the west side.
And finally, we have Yahira Cordero, honorary clerk for the evening. Do you have any report for us this evening, Yahira?
No, sir.
Fantastic job tonight, by the way.
It's really, it was a challenge, but not
loved every
impossible.
minute.
Not impossible, no overcame. It's okay.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
All right.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you. All right, with that, we are done.
Happy birthday. Happy birthday, everyone.
My brother.